Jenny, you had a very exceptional experience during a visit to the vets when your mother's dear tomcat had to be put to sleep because he had a severe cancer. How did this happen? For Christmas, and after many years of loneliness, my mother wanted to have a cat. So I picked one out for her and brought it to her. It was a young Siamese tomcat. They are slender, intelligent cats with light blue eyes, and it was a great joy to my mother. Unfortunately, it soon became apparent that the tomcat was not thriving. He first was doing very well, and my mother just adored having him. Then his behavior started to change, and he lost a lot of weight, and unfortunately, he was diagnosed with a very serious disease. He was suffering from a malignant lymphoma cancer. Not a good life prognosis for the tomcat. Based on the location of the cancer in his chest cavity, it was clear that the tumor was pressing on the respiratory tract and the heart, so there was not much that could be done for him. Thus, this was a terribly sad time of saying goodbye, which was coming upon us. Until one day, unfortunately, it got to the point where he just was torturing himself. He couldn't eat anymore. As well, he hardly had any quality of life. For example, when he wanted to sleep, he couldn't even lie down because the tumor or the mass of the tumor would put even more pressure on his respiratory tract. He also was suffering attacks where he actually turned blue. Consequently, we had to follow the doctor's advice because we, too, had understood that his chances of healing were very slim. It was clear that our tomcat had to be put down, as is common with pets that are given a serious diagnosis with a poor chance of survival. When the day finally came, it was incredibly difficult for us. We were crying a lot, holding him in our arms. Then we took him with us. The journey to the vet surgery was terrible for us, even though we knew we were sparing him further pain and suffering. On the other hand, it was all heartbreaking for us because we knew he would just simply be gone forever once we returned home. He would then no longer be with us. And above all, those big blue eyes that were so deep seeing were looking at us. They touched us so deeply. So we just cried our hearts out. We didn't care that other people noticed, the people on the streets. It was a beautiful day in spring, but for us it was anything but beautiful. It was dramatic and truly awful. Well, we arrived at the vet's. She put him on the table, prepared her utensils and the medication, then administered one injection to put him into a twilight sleep. And actually, the terrible moment was when the final injection had to be administered, by means of which the animal is put to sleep. Oh, it was so bad, really so awful. And unfortunately, it didn't get any easier, neither for the vet, nor for our dear cat, nor for us, because due to various metastases and further tumor formations in the little one's body, this medication could not reach his heart and was not being distributed throughout his body. So the vet had to give a second injection, but that didn't help either. So a third injection had to be given directly into the kitten's heart. It was truly terrible. At that point in time, we were even crying loudly while holding him and stroking him. And in view of this unfortunate situation, I quietly, deep down inside of me, was hoping that it would soon be over for the poor animal. Suddenly, in the midst of this terribly painful situation, something completely unexpected happened. As my tears were streaming down my face, they suddenly dried up, as if someone had come wiping them away. And I was overcome by a feeling that took me completely by surprise. Suddenly, the atmosphere and the energy in the room changed. It became quiet, peaceful, and beautiful. Really, so beautiful. I even felt it physically. It all was so surprising, and I closed my eyes because it felt so nice. So I went inside myself and let all this just simply overwhelm me, flow through me. And when I closed my eyes, I saw what I then saw must have been through my inner eye. In any case, I saw very clearly a figure which looked like an angel. And this figure was holding our little Angie, the tomcat's name, like angel in English. She was holding him in her arms, and all this was so beautiful. It was overwhelming. The little one was full of vitality. He was chubby cheeked again, and as well a bit playful. He was obviously doing very well, and he was no longer the emaciated tomcat that had been lying before us, dying. He was really looking very good, and the angel was holding him full of love. And I was so surprised and so happy. Then I quickly opened my eyes and said to my mother, "Mom, Mom, Angie is being picked up. Close your eyes, Mom. They're here. He's being picked up." I thought that my mother would see it too, because it was so present. There was such a strong presence of all this. But my mother was still looking at the syringe sticking out of the kitten's heart. And I didn't realize she was not seeing something as I did, because her tears were still streaming down her face. But for me, everything had changed in that moment, because all of this was something completely different, something I had never experienced before in my life. Maybe it can be described or compared with the many feelings that we all have, beautiful feelings, pleasant feelings. However, none of that can really express what it was exactly. Can you describe this angelic figure in more detail? Do you remember anything about it? I still remember it very clearly. So it was indeed a feminine being. That's at least what it felt like. I did not see any long hair, nor did I see a face. But in terms of energy, it felt motherly, loving, caring, welcoming. And as to her whole appearance, it was a figure that was in some way also had form. It was a figure that in some way also had form. And this appearance as a whole was wearing a long robe consisting of some kind of veils. I didn't see any wings. There were just only slightly flowing veils. It had something airy about it, and the colors were, well, now this is very difficult to describe. I would like to say they were crystal-like, like crystals catching the light every now and then, iridescent, also similar to sunlight reflecting on the surface of the water. There was something translucent, in any case light-filled about it. but it was also transparent. There was not any distinct color, but it was bright and luminous, and this being was holding our tomcat very lovingly. However, what was even more impressive for me than this vision was the completely impressive experience itself, how everything felt different at that moment. Time no longer existed. It was as if everything was standing still, and I was permeated and surrounded by a benevolent energy. There was a feeling of supreme love and peace, as well as a kind of comprehending. So in that moment, it was completely clear to me that I would be leaving things like sorrow, suffering, and worries far behind. So everything would be good. This, however, meaning a different kind of good. It rather was as if I had never known pain and suffering and would never have to worry about what was to come either. It was a perfectly deep, welcoming, calming feeling, and it was not my senses that were perceiving this. It was rather that this feeling was just simply there, and I found myself inside it. And it was this feeling that was flowing through me. And I found myself surrounded by all of this. And especially with regard to Angie, the tomcat, I knew with 100% certainty that everything is fine and that he was doing very well. And this was such a nice feeling. And there was a very striking contrast to what had happened before. Because at that moment, I had completely forgotten that just a short moment previously, I had been crying with a broken heart. And tell me, what happened after this experience? Well, I was accompanied by this feeling for about 2 hours. Angie had passed away when I saw him with the angel, and when I afterwards had returned to the previous situation, he was no longer living on earth, so it must have been at that moment when his heart had stopped beating, whereafter he had been pronounced dead and given to us. And I was walking as if on air, accompanied by an incredibly loving, natural understanding toward the vet and my mom. So I felt a great understanding that I would never be able to condemn my fellow human beings for anything. There never would be anything that I could not have understood by some natural empathy, and it has stayed that way, and this was indescribably beautiful. The state of being lasted for about 2 hours, and during this time, we took the deceased kitten with us and prepared it for a funeral. The contrast between my feelings and those of my mother proved to be rather significant. For me, this was a body that had been living, but now it no longer had any function or meaning. I no longer saw the tomcat in this body, whereas my mother still wanted to stroke the body and cuddle it, saying, "It's still warm. Maybe he's still alive. Maybe he's recovering. I can't just put it in the cold earth." But I was able to say with a natural certainty, "Mom, he's gone and he's fine. He's in the light," which was completely clear to me. Even now, when I'm thinking of the tomcat, there is this joy, this certainty that he is fine. Something has indeed changed within me as well. Inside me, I feel a sense of great anticipation and the yearning for this indescribably peaceful state of being. Furthermore, I now know that death is not the end for the tomcat, nor for any other pet, and this makes me believe that it is no different for us humans either. I'm convinced that we too will be welcomed by something beautiful, and this will be full of light and love and really so beautiful. Unfortunately, this state of being is gone, but I would really be happy to find it back. So I have tried to consciously find my way back to this state of being. Unfortunately, I can no longer empathize with this. Well, after those 2 hours, I had to make a very conscious decision as to whether I was still drawn to the memories of the tomcat's looks, telling me that he had to leave as if he knew, and enabling me to understand his desire to sleep. So I witnessed his last painful hours. But then I had to make a conscious decision. Am I drawn to those memories, or am I rather drawn to what I perceived spiritually? It was comparable to a fork in the road, where I had chosen the path of encountering the angel. In those first few hours, it was a conscious decision, a choice, and it was somewhat difficult to take this path rather than the path of painful memories. But now it has become complete normalcy. You may be familiar with the fact that we are sometimes shown photos on our smartphones. And today, for example, I happened to receive the very last picture of Angie, showing me how he was laying there so sweetly, but already dead. It was the very last picture we took of him. Amazingly, I did not have to cry, even though it is an incredibly sad photo. But I am sure that he is fine. So why should I continue mourning? Why should I cry? I know that he is fine. Jeny, thank you very much.